Hello, everyone. And today, I know it's a little late, but I wanted to get a video out about the Dynasties update for Total War Pharaoh. Now, if you saw my review, you saw that I I enjoyed the game, but I was a little lukewarm on it for several reasons. Mainly due to the fact that the campaign map and the scale and scope of the whole scenario was not large enough. Like it was very, very. There were too many things cut out. You could not have a Bronze Age game without um, Western Asia Minor, without um, the Lake Van region, without Western Iran, without Mesopotamia. You couldn't do that. And with this update, they attempt to rectify that. And I just want to give my thoughts about this update here. So let's go to new campaign here, and I want to talk a little bit about the additions. So, of course, you have your original three cultures here that were in the game upon release. So you have Egypt, or the Egyptian factions. So again, first thing I don't like about Total War Pharaoh, or about the last few Total Wars, in fact, is the character focus. I think Total War is a little bit more of a grand strategy game, and it doesn't feel that grand when you're trying to sort of focus on the ambitions of a particular character, however major or minor they may be. I just prefer the older style where you were clearly in control of a country or a kingdom or a rebel faction. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So you have the four Egyptian factions: Ramses III, Seti, Tausret, and Amenmese. You have Hatti, so the Hittite culture factions, Shupaliliuma the second, and Kurunta from Tarhuntasha in southeastern Asia Minor, Kilikia. So, of course, you have Canaan, which has one Egyptian prince faction, and then Irsu, who is a sort of semi sea peoples type character. And then you have the sea peoples here. So while Wetes, patriarch of the Peliset, and Iolaus, the blade of the Sheridan. So again, the sea people factions, they were added prior to this update, this latest Dynasties update. So with the Dynasties update, you have two new cultures, Mesopotamia and the Aegean. So with Mesopotamia, you have Ninurta Apal Ekur's faction. So this is an Assyrian faction in northern Mesopotamia. And then you have Adad Shuma Utsur. So he is king of the Babylonians in southern Mesopotamia. And these are, of course, two factions that you had to have in a Bronze Age game. Like, I don't know what else to say. I've made a whole bunch of videos about this. Even prior to the announcement of Total War Pharaoh, I said that I thought the next Total War game would be a Bronze Age Total War game, or at least focus on the ancient Middle East, and I laid out what the game should look like. And of course, Mesopotamia was front and center. So the fact that they are added here is, of course, good to me. And then, of course, you have Total War Troy that's been kind of grafted onto this game. And it's not a bad thing, because Total War Troy had a lot of, a lot of the equipment and the helmets and the shield patterns and weapons and things like that. A lot of that was really well done and historically inspired. It wasn't just inspired by sort of mythological or legendary designs that were, of course, I mean, Troy is the Trojan War, the Iliad, and the Odyssey. They are um, like epic poems, right? They're epics. They aren't historical texts. However, uh, there are like historical bases for the event. So Priam, ruler of Troy, there was a ruler in Western Asia Minor, Priama Radu, who is mentioned in Hittite texts as being a sort of rebel against their authority. And so it's good that he's here. And of course, you have Agamemnon, king of the Mycenaeans, the Greeks called Achiawa in Hittite texts. And it's good that they're here. I'm happy they're here. I'm not going to delve too deep into the historical aspect of that. But you might say that, these four editions aren't enough, right? But now with the Dynasties update, you also have access to minor factions, these things called minor factions. So mainly, I want to say the factions that are added here are you have Ayasha in Eastern Asia Minor, this sort of Western Armenian region. You have, and they were a kind of menace to the Hittites for a while. You have a few other Hittite factions, so Chelaritzi and Tsuwa. You have Ugarit here, which is very good. I'm very glad they added Ugarit, that it's like the iconic city destroyed by the Bronze Age ravages of the Sea Peoples, right? So very important to have that there. You have the Nairi here. So I have some issues with this. It says culture Urartu, and then capital Mutsatsir, and then faction Lulubi. So that's like a mix of three different things. Mutsatsir was the capital of a place called, if I'm not mistaken, Mana, and it was sort of an Iranian chiefdom in that area. And then Urartu is, of course, kind of an anachronistic name. It comes later, the same as biblical Ararat. But there was a region here called Uruatri, and it's actually present in the game when you play as this faction. And the Lulubi are an Iranian people who were a little bit more south in the Zagros region. So this faction should have been called something like Nairi, which was kind of a tribal confederation, a pre-Urartian tribal confederation that fought with the Assyrians in this time period in the late second millennium. And then the culture should have been different. Anyway, it's fine for sort of Total War type history. It's fine. And then you have one of my favorites, the Elamites. So the Elamites make their first appearance in a Total War game, which I'm very happy about under Kidin Hutran III, with their capital at Susa. I wish there was a little bit more of Iran here, like stretching a little bit east of Elamite territory, but that's just my biases. And there are, of course, a few other factions here as well, but those are the major ones. And if we go to the Aegean, of course, you have a lot of the factions from Total War Troy. And of course, these factions are kind of, again, here's one of my biggest problems with Total War Pharaoh is front and center here you have Ajax. So it's like you're playing as Ajax, right? Who's a fully legendary character. But then you have the culture, the Achaeans, and then the faction, the Boeotians, and the capital Salamis. So the faction is the Boeotians. And that's totally fine. But then you have, again, the character is front and center, Odysseus. So like we go back to Mesopotamia here, front and center you have like Ashpabara, right? So it's almost like you're playing as Ashpabara, not as the Nairi or the Lulubi in this case, right? Excuse me. That's just a problem for me. I just don't like that. It doesn't make sense to me. And then the funny thing here is that the pharaoh at the start of the campaign, the actual pharaoh is Merneptah, right? And the whole scenario here is that he dies, and then Ramses has to deal with a sort of civil war in Egypt in order to take the throne and become the pharaoh. But you can only play as Merneptah if you go to minor factions. Uh, it just strikes me as strange. But I want to get into the campaign as one of the factions here and show what I like about the Dynasties update and some more issues I have on the campaign aspect. One thing I do like before the campaign starts are these new loading screens, like the Babylonian ones. It's very, very nice. And you have the Ishtar Gate here. Again, a little bit anachronistic, but it's fine. I really do like the artwork in Total War Pharaoh, at least when it's not like the 3D models. So we've entered the campaign here as the Elamites, who, again, I'm so glad to have them in a Total War game finally. And like, I love seeing the Elamite ziggurats. Chorazanbil. We have Chorazanbil in a Total War game. That's pretty incredible. And of course, some nice Mesopotamian lions. And I really do like the campaign map and the artwork in this game. It's really well done. You know, again, I don't like the 3D models, but I like the 2D art, and I like the campaign map as well. Now, something I don't like. Now, in order to play as the Elamites, you have to go to minor factions and then choose Mesopotamia. So, a problem with that is that a lot of the voice lines for units with the Mesopotamian culture talk about like Assyria and Babylon, right? So if you're playing as like the Elamites, or if you're playing as Urartu, so like sworn enemies of the Assyrians and the Babylonians, respectively, your units talk about like Mesopotamian gods. And I guess in the case of the Elamites, you can make an argument that that's kind of okay, but it's a little bit immersion breaking when you're in battle, just a little bit. Luckily, you can it's okay. There are far more immersion breaking things in the original Rome Total War. Now, things that I like about the Dynasties update. Of course, we have the family tree. So we have the Elamite ruling family here. So Alutash in Shushinak, married to Lankuku, and their son Shutruk Nahunte, very famous king Shutruk Nahunte. Something to note about the Elamites, of course, is that the Elamite language has H that is not a H, whereas Hittite and Babylonian and Assyrian did have a H and no H, as opposed to that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The new campaign map update. I really love the expanded map. The map, this feels like a real Bronze Age scenario you can get lost in. The campaign map also looks much nicer when you zoom out. And of course, you can kind of observe the world here. So you have all of Achiawa, all of Greece, and then Asia Minor and Mesopotamia, Western Iran, all the way down to Egypt, and then Kush. Kush was added as well. You can now play as Kush too. And all of those regions, 100% necessary for a game set this time period. I'm sorry. So, okay, what's my verdict here? Battles to me in the update, I know there were some updates there, but I didn't find them to be that different, so I'm not going to talk about them very much. Except for the fact that the new units are, of course, nice indeed. Now, big updates for me in this Dynasties update are, of course, the new factions, the map expansion, and the family trees. With these additions, I think Total War Pharaoh is now at the scale it needs to be a full-fledged historical Total War game, and a good platform for mods as well. Total War Troy, like now Total War Troy's units and everything have kind of been grafted onto Total War Pharaoh. And like Total War Troy totally should have been an expansion for Total War Pharaoh. Like Total War Pharaoh is kind of this grand ancient Middle East collapse scenario, almost like a barbarian invasion type scenario. And that's great. And Total War Troy is definitely a regional campaign. Would have been a fantastic expansion for Total War Pharaoh. The way that was done, I just don't agree with. I think I called Total War Troy with the Mythos update a Birdemic Total War. If you want to see my video on that, it's kind of funny. I enjoyed it. It didn't get too many views though. But how do I want to conclude this? And the family trees. The family trees in this update make the game feel more complete to me. Now, the battles for me in Total War Pharaoh are pretty much similar to a lot of the modern Total War games, and they're fine. The best battles for me in the Total War series are with the Rome Total War, the first Rome Total War engine, so that includes Rome Remastered as well, since it uses the same battle engine, and then followed closely by Shogun 2, which I think does very well with its battle engine, even though it is just an updated version of the Empire and Napoleon battle engine. They're fine to me. I'm not a huge stickler for those. I think the whole package here is at least complete now. Total War Pharaoh upon release, to me, did not feel like a complete package. It felt like another regional campaign. So I guess that's where I kind of want to leave this video off. There are plenty of other videos that will delve into the added battle mechanics and things of that nature, and other people can talk better about those topics than me. Again, what I want to focus on here is that with Total War Pharaoh Dynasties, the game feels complete now, and I can recommend it if you're interested in the time period. And if you're interested in a new historical Total War game, I really enjoy it. Of course, I'm an ancient Near East nut. I mean, I'm Gudea of Lagash, right? Sumerian king. I really love the ancient Near East. This is my time period. So I have a special connection to like the whole setting here. Like this is my setting. And I really love the references here. Like now that we have the Elamites, we have gods like Inshushinak included in a Total War game. And I think that's fantastic. Getting more exposure to the ancient Near East in like modern media, popular media. Fantastic. I love it. Am I happy about Total War Pharaoh Dynasties? I mean, yes, but this is what the game should have been at release. And then we should have been getting expansions like new era campaigns, like the Rise of Persia and Cyrus the Great, Behistun campaign with vast ancient Near East rebellions against Darius the Great, something related to the Behistun inscription. We could have had a Neo-Assyrian era campaign where you could have had Egypt and Urartu battling against Assyria and Babylonian rebels. You could have had Rise of Sargon in the Akkadian Empire scenario, Naram Sin scenario, declaring himself a god. You could have had the Neo-Sumerian Empire, Ur III dynasty, at the turn of the 2nd millennium BC. You could have had a Sumerian city-state scenario with like an even more zoomed in map of just Mesopotamia. So you could have like United Kengir, which of course just means Sumer. It's actually the same word, actually. But, and like play as Lugal Zagesi and things like that. So I like the game, I really do. But this is what the game should have been at release. And I really hope they put in a little more effort and make an era campaign. I think with its own mechanics too, a few unique mechanics in that era campaign would make things quite nice. Anyway, those are pretty much my thoughts about Total War Pharaoh the Dynasties update. If you enjoy videos about the historical Total Wars and their mods, consider liking this video, consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you in the next one later.